Right, and this last section we're going to talk about here has to do with the relationship between the branches of government. The relationship between Congress, the president, and the Supreme Court. And one thing that we probably notice right away is that that relationship has changed or evolved over time. My picture here that I've drawn, that I've used is another one where I'm having people speak. The Democratic donkey is often used to represent Democrats. He says, our president worked well with the Republican in the House under Newt Gingrich and passed many laws, cut our budget deficit dramatically, actually making 4 straight years of budget surplus, that we've been paying down our debt. Um, since we took over the House in 2018, we have not worked with Trump, but instead we have passed bills he doesn't want and investigating him around every corner. So in the 90s, when I was a college-age kid, President Clinton worked very well with the Republican House led by a man named Newt Gingrich. And together they were able to pass a bunch of stuff and be very successful. They actually made 4 straight years of budget surplus for the first time in the last 100 plus years, the first time since 1800s that we've had 4 straight years of budget surplus. Yeah, that was the late 90s and early 2000s under President Clinton, who worked with the Democrats. Now, the Republican in the House. Now, things have changed over the last 20 years. When the Democrats took over the House, they are not working with President Trump. They're working against President Trump. And it might be argued that the Republicans worked against President Obama. So in the last 20 years alone, we've seen a shift in the way that the Congress and the president work together. I have down here under my Republican elephant, he says, our president worked well with Democrats in the 1980s. This is President Reagan worked with Democrat Tip O'Neill. We got a lot of things done for our country. We made country a better place. But under Obama, we shut down everything and we attempted to make him a one-term president. I have a quote from President Eisenhower down here. He says, and all those things in which deal with people, be liberal, be human, and all those things which deal with people's money or economy, be conservative. So this was his judicial theory. It's often thought that Eisenhower was kind of a middle-of-the-road president. We used to have middle-of-the-road presidents who wanted to work with both sides, who wanted to do things that to try and help the country. And it seems now like we've entered a stage what could change, right? In a snap of a finger, where we've had nothing but fighting for a few decades now. Maybe during Bush's term, maybe not. I'm not sure if Bush II, you can say that Congress worked with him or not. But under Obama and under Trump, it seems as though there's been a lot more fighting. That could change right back. They give an interesting example of the book of the courts, right? We talked about the courts. We said that right now there's a very conservative member of the court being confirmed as we speak, that this will shift the balance of power in the court maybe for decades. But gosh, the court, they say in 1832, the Supreme Court ruled against President Jackson and his idea of the removal of the Cherokee. The Cherokee, the Creek, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw were all Native American groups from Georgia and Alabama. And the Americans at this point wanted to take that land for themselves. The Cherokee followed every rule that they were forced to follow. They did everything they were asked to do, as the other tribes were fighting back, because every time you fought back against America, they would crush you, right? So the Cherokee said, we're just going to work with you. We'll follow your laws. We want to be American citizens. And the Supreme Court, when Andrew Jackson said, we're still going to get rid of them, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. And Andrew Jackson said, stop me. Try and stop me. And he did it anyways. So sometimes in our country's history, the president has ignored the Supreme Court and said, I dare you to try and stop me. That doesn't happen today. But could it? Right? I mean, there's a lot of things that our Constitution doesn't specifically spell out, like how are the courts going to enforce their rulings? What if a president decides, I'm going to do what I want to do with my military? What are you going to do, Supreme Court? Like Andrew Jackson did in 1932. I don't know what would happen. There are a lot of question marks out there. And the relations change as our country changes. We can only hope that we decide as people that we are going to work together and and that we never see a situation again where a president orders the military to defy the Supreme Court and challenges them to stop. Okay, go ahead and stop me. So, anyways, in terms of relationships between the branches, we see that sometimes they're hot, sometimes they're cold, and sometimes they're working together, and sometimes they're openly defiant. And then we can judge exactly where we are in our moment we're living through based on our own opinions. Many would suggest that we're living through a very divided period in our country. And many of us hope that we come back together. Others maybe think it's great that we're divided and think that maybe it's best if we fight for whatever thoughts that we want. We should be fighting.